Nona Asya was a household name during the 1950s and 1960s when she was a radio host and a voiceover singer for Malay films. Dubbed the First Lady of Entertainment, her singing voice featured in many films produced by Singapore's two major studios at the time, Malay Film Productions and Cathay Keris. Asya began singing as a young girl during the Japanese occupation when she joined her mother's opera troupe to perform for the Japanese soldiers. After the war, Radio Malaya hired her as a singer and host. Aged just 16, she helmed a weekly program where she sang Malay and Indonesian songs requested by listeners. Her show was popular and HMV offered her a recording contract. Asya was one of the first local female singers to be signed by HMV. Her debut record, a cover in Malay of the popular Spanish song Besame Mucho, was a big hit. Other hits included Gelora Cinta and Cempaka Biru, which were written by Singapore composer Zubir Said. At her peak, Asya was much in demand in the region and often travelled with an orchestra to perform at concerts. She continued working even after marriage. This gave her financial independence that was rare for women then, and she was able to buy herself a red MG sports car. Asya retired from performing in the 1970s and became a vocal instructor. Many of the young people who appeared in the popular 1980s children's television series Mat Yo Yo were trained by her. Two of her own children, Iskandar and Indra, built illustrious musical careers. Asya was awarded the Cultural Medallion in 2016. Bee Kim, a pioneer of women's golf in Singapore, reigned over the local and regional fairways for nearly 3 decades. Her dominance was such that the media dubbed her Queen Bee. In 1970, aged just 18, she was the first Asian to become the Singapore Island Country Club's women's champion. In 1971, she was the first Singaporean to win the Singapore Open Women's Golf Championship. The following year, she topped the Indonesian, Malaysian, and Thai women's tournaments. In 1974, she was ranked the 10th best player in Asia. Bee Kim discovered her talent for golf by accident when she was 11. Wandering around her club after swimming training, she found her brother at the practice range. He seemed to be having fun, so she had a go at swinging a club, and she was hooked. Her father, former national footballer Ling, bought her a half set of golf clubs. Bee Kim devoured golf books and magazines. Golf then was dominated by the big three, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and Gary Player. She studied all of them closely. Bee Kim's talent was such that many felt she should turn pro, but she was not interested, saying she was happy to be a good amateur player. In the 3 decades that she reigned over the fairways, Bee Kim helped transform the face of golf in Singapore and inspire generations of young women to try their hand at the sport. When Koh Soo Boon returned to Singapore in 1973 with a mathematics degree from King's College London, she could have become a statistician. But DBS Bank made her an interesting offer, so she went into banking. This set her on the path to becoming the first Singaporean woman to break into the boys' club, that is Silicon Valley. At DBS, she started out in the dealing room. Over the next 12 years, she moved through various roles, including supervising the lending portfolios of 8 overseas branches. She gained wide and invaluable exposure to many aspects of business. In 1986, her husband was posted to San Francisco, so Soo Boon quit her job. She was briefly a homemaker. Then, the Singapore Technologies Group asked her to represent them. In 1988, she set up its corporate venture arm, Vertex Management. She was starting from scratch, so she arranged back-to-back meetings, asking lots of questions of everyone she met. Soo Boon spent 11 years establishing Vertex's operations in California and London. In 1999, she decided to branch out on her own and set up iGlobe Partners, Singapore's first female-founded venture capital firm. iGlobe, which invests mainly in the early to mid-growth stages of technology companies in Singapore and abroad, has consistently achieved top quartile fund returns. Boon, who learned the importance of financial independence from her mother, is keen to see more women decision-makers in companies. Women have an innate nurturing ability, she says. When they can translate this to the workplace, they have huge potential to build great things in the corporate world. Ding Ling first saw a horseshoe crab when she was a child. She thought it looked like an alien from outer space. Little did she know that the creature would one day play a key role in her scientific research and that she would make a discovery that would change the biomedical industry and save the horseshoe crab from extinction. The horseshoe crab's blood has an enzyme, factor C, that is very sensitive to endotoxins from bacteria. Pharmaceutical and medical device companies use this blood to ensure that injectable drugs and medical equipment are free from endotoxins. In other words, horseshoe crabs help save human lives. Huge numbers of horseshoe crabs are caught and part of their blood extracted. They are then put back in the sea. But many die and they are an endangered species. Catching them and extracting the blood is time-consuming and costly. In the 1980s, Ling began to look for an alternative. In 2000, she and her team, which includes her husband, microbiologist Ho Pao, succeeded in the genetic engineering of factor C. This cloned version is more stable and chemically consistent than the natural form. Known as Pyrogene, it is one of the National University of Singapore's most successfully commercialized technologies. Ling has won many awards for her outstanding research work. In 2016, she was one of the 2 women awarded the Singapore National Academy of Science Fellowship. It was the first time that the fellowship, which was established in 1977, went to women scientists. Sudhan Nair chose social work instead of English literature when she came from Penang in 1983 to study at the National University of Singapore. It was a choice that would later see her starting Singapore's first family violence specialist centre and becoming the first social worker appointed to the Council of Presidential Advisors. Sudha grew up in Malaysia in a family of activists. After her A-levels, she joined the Consumers Association of Penang and saw how farmers and fishermen were affected by industrialization. It was her introduction to social inequality and injustice. Sudha would have stayed on at that job, but her sister Asha, a journalist, insisted that she get a university education. After she got her degree, Sudha joined the Ang Mo Kio Family Service Centre. She was the only social worker. When she left the centre 17 years later to get her doctorate, it was one of the leading social service agencies in Singapore and a model for other family service centres. Sudha saw how difficult it was for victims of family violence to get the help they needed. In 1999, she started the Centre for Promoting Alternatives to Violence, or PAVE, as a pilot project at the Ang Mo Kio FSC. It became an independent agency in 2002, after which Sudha left to pursue her doctorate. In 2012, she returned to PAVE as its executive director. PAVE now handles 2,000 family violence cases every year. Sudha has won many awards for her contributions to social work in Singapore. In 2015, she was the first social worker to be appointed to the Public Service Commission. When the National Centre for Infectious Diseases began in January 2020 to prepare for the inevitable arrival of the COVID-19 coronavirus in Singapore, it had a seasoned campaigner at its helm. Yee Sin, the centre's executive director, was at the forefront of Singapore's battles with infectious diseases such as Nipah, SARS, pandemic influenzas, Zika, dengue, and monkeypox. Yee Sin decided to specialize in infectious diseases in 1989. A few years later, she worked as a clinical fellow in Los Angeles, where half of her workload consisted of HIV cases. When she returned to Singapore, she decided to focus on HIV, which then was still a taboo topic. In 1995, Yee Sin set up the first HIV program in Singapore. In 1997, she started the Patient Care Centre at the Communicable Disease Centre. She raised funds to help HIV patients with the high cost of their medication, and she worked hard to get policymakers to see the importance of HIV treatment. Today, HIV is no longer the fearful and isolating disease it used to be. In 1999, Yee Sin got her first frontline experience with emerging novel infectious diseases when the Nipah virus hit Singapore. Then came SARS and other outbreaks. As Yee Sin and her team tackled each new threat to public health in Singapore, her reputation as a leader in Singapore's fight against infectious diseases grew. In 2003, Yee Sin was awarded the Public Service Star for her work in combating SARS. And in 2020, she was named by the BBC as one of the world's top 100 women because of her work in tackling COVID-19. Lily Kong made history in 2015 when the Singapore Management University appointed her provost. She was the first woman university provost in Singapore. 3 years later, after a 7-month global search, SMU announced that Lily had been chosen as its 5th president. She is the first Singaporean to helm the 21-year-old university and the first woman to head a Singapore university. As SMU Provost, Lily drove many projects that enhanced the quality of the university's students and faculty and its educational offerings and research. New interdisciplinary majors and tracks including politics, law and economics, smart city management and technology, and healthcare economics and management programs were introduced. A university, Lily believes, must give back to its community. It should nurture entrepreneurial young people so they can come up with new ideas to address the challenges of the world. SMU has thus created incubation space to foster innovation and entrepreneurship among students, alumni, and local businesses. Apart from her achievements as a university administrator, Lily is widely known for her research on urban transformations and social and cultural change in Asia. She has published extensively and is on the editorial board of more than 15 international journals in her field and is often featured as a keynote speaker or moderator at conferences. Lily has earned international awards such as the Association of American Geographers Robert Stoddard Award for Distinguished Service, Geography of Religion and Belief Systems. In a 2020 Stanford University study, Lily was ranked among the top 1% of scientists in the world in her discipline. She was awarded the Public Service Star in 2020.